Thank you, everybody, so much for joining today for this special celebration. This is not a normal community session. We have a lot of things to celebrate today. But first, the agenda. We will go over project news, which will be a lot. And after that, we will have a panel discussion on developer experience. But first, let's get to the news. Today is a very special day. It's the second birthday of Backstage as an open source project. And that's something we wanted to celebrate with you. And for that, we have prepared this little video.
Is on. All right.
Happy birthday, Backstage. Okay.
Wait, do it. Happy birthday, Backstage.
My journey with Backstage started a year ago when I joined an awesome company called Rody, which works for unhosted solution based on Backstage.
We've adopted Backstage as part of our initiative to reduce friction for our developers on their development journey. My team regularly contributes to Backstage, and they've been the ones to encourage me to do so since I started my internship.
I started looking for a project on which I can both learn and contribute back. And Backstage appeared to be the perfect project for me.
What's not to like about the community?
One of the better things that I like about the community, let's say, is the fact that people are just willing to get involved, get stuck in and pick up tickets, like reading through good first issues and stuff like that.
From my experience, I found the Backstage community to be very welcoming and supportive of new developers. It's also very large and diverse.
I love the fact that the community is also really proactive. The one that always springs to mind, because I think it was one of the earliest examples, was we put a ticket out for dark mode for Backstage. And we included some screenshots and a few bits and pieces. And within minutes of it being out there, someone had assigned it to themselves. And within a day, we had dark mode in the project.
I am working on contributing a way to visualize metrics for tech docs.
I've implemented AWS S3 as a tech docs external storage to store and recall and read generated documentation sites from S3 buckets.
Recently, I've developed Tech Insights plugin for its front-end part, which is something I'm very proud of.
I think contributions everywhere help.
We don't have kind of resources to test all that stuff, so helping us out testing things that maybe people from the community contributed, maybe stuff that we've contributed, is a massive help for us.
There's the small contribution, which is a typo fix, a small bug fix that's really clear. Those are really nice to get because they're so easy to review.
It would be great to get more contributions in terms of design. I'm from a very technical background doing a lot of infrastructure projects, so design is usually not something that I think of every day, but it's so pleasing to see like a well-functioning and easy to understand UI.
The big contributions are great as well, that introduce new features and new ideas into the project. They're a lot harder. They challenge us more.
It might be a bit frightening when you think about a bunch of people looking at your code and giving you comments and discussing it, or being part of big discussions and decisions. But when you think about it, where else in the world would you get a chance to be part of big decisions? Where else in the world would you have a chance to have that many people look at your code, hear you out, and help you out?
The amount of people that have kind of got involved from day one and trying to help build this product really solidifies kind of the concept that Backstage is trying to solve, or the problem it's trying to solve.
Happy birthday, Backstage. The past 2 years have been amazing. Let's see what the next year can bring.
Yeah, isn't that great and heartwarming to hear those little snippets about the community, about the enthusiasm of this project? This is the basis of the past 2 years and of the success of Backstage. Thank you all for that. Thank you for being a part of this and letting this project exist. And let's hope that there's many, many more birthdays to celebrate. We have put up a blog online on backstage.io. The link will be pasted in the chat by someone, probably. Please share that. Share your love for Backstage, share our celebrations with the rest of the world. Let's grow this community the next year. Let's see who else we can make a part of this vibrant place where people can learn, exchange new ideas. Yeah, thank you so much for that. The next thing on the news is that Spotify has a new podcast where they talk nerdy stuff. It's by Spotify R&D, and they have featured Backstage in the first 2 episodes. Probably somebody will also paste the link in the chat. I know that Emma's there. And have a listen and learn more about the backstory and some fun banter and in general some nerdy stuff. The other one, the big one that we wanted to celebrate with you is Backstage status in CNCF. As you all might know, Backstage is a CNCF project, and it was in Sandbox status for a while. And now we have reached the next stage, and that is incubation. So yay, huge milestone. A project can grow older and older without too much trouble. But this is what we say, achievement unlocked. And to talk a little bit about that, I have Lee here, and I want to welcome him. Hi, Lee. Thank you for joining.
Hi, Suzanne. Hi, everybody.
So this incubation thing, it's a big thing, right?
A little bit, you could say that. It's the next step on the ladder, if you will, for the project. It's the kind of the next development of maturity for the project, and it's down to all of the hard work of the team here and the community out there that has helped us to get to this point.
So you said hard work. What is this process, and what did we do?
So the incubation process itself, it takes a little bit of time. So the first thing that we did was way back in September, I think it was, last year, where we basically take a look at the project, see where we are, see how the community is doing, how healthy is that community, how healthy is the project, and we create a PR when we think we're ready to the CNCF to say, hey, this is us, here's a little bit about us, here's how we've grown, here's who's using us, and you know, we're interested in becoming joining incubation. So that was something that we did back in September of last year. And then if you fast forward, really the pace started to pick up for us when we were assigned a CNCF sponsor. So that is somebody in the CNCF who is there to help us through the process and to kind of dig into the project and really kind of understand it at that next level of detail, if you will. So we were assigned a sponsor at the beginning of the year, and we run through a due diligence process, which is you do an analysis of the tech, of the community, of all really the different aspects around the project. And also they conduct some interviews with some of our end users. So we had 4 sets of end users that took part. I can talk about Zalando, I can talk about TELUS, who helped us, so thank you very much, guys. And we had a couple of other end users who wanted to remain anonymous. But they do this interview, they answer a few questions about the project and where it is and how they find it. And that's really the due diligence part of the process. That goes through to a vote with the TOC, so the oversight committee at the CNCF, where effectively it's a majority rules vote. So they get to discuss, they get to review everything. There's a public comment part in that process too. And then hopefully by the end of all of this process, you've learned some stuff. We learned some insights. We adopted the CNCF Code of Conduct. We put some more detail into our descriptions around maintainers and sponsors and that side of things. And then there's a vote. And today, we're super happy to announce that, as you said, we're in incubation.
Okay, and what does incubation actually mean?
So incubation is one of the maturity levels within the CNCF. There's three, as you showed on your last slide. There's the sandbox where we were, there's incubating, and then there's graduation. That's the one. And basically, it's maturity that is demonstrated through the sustainability to kind of the TLC, which is the process that we've just gone through. It's all about the adoption, the healthy rate of change, the committers from multiple organizations, and basically our commitment to the open source community and the projects in the open source kind of longer term. So incubation is that next step on our way to graduation. Hopefully it demonstrates our commitment that we're here and we're going to stay around and keep this project going. And it also helps us, it helps us build more contacts within the CNCF and all of the great projects that are out there, and build some of those relationships and hopefully unlock some doors for us to be able to work closer together and bring some of that experience and knowledge and those sort of things in as well.
Okay, and besides the relationships, which will be probably fruitful for the project, how will it influence the development of Backstage, maybe in other ways?
So Backstage is, how to describe it? To me, Backstage is kind of a hub. It's a central place where we basically can bring together a bunch of different projects, a bunch of different ideas and perspectives. And hopefully we provide some pretty good pipes and tunnels and things for all of those things to communicate for. The super end goal is to make it, of course, as simplified or as simple as possible for engineers to use and for end users to use the project, as my front door goes off. So that threw me off. Yeah, so
that never happens.
In regards with the CNCF, hopefully we can have a similar pattern with all of the other projects and bring in all of those perspectives and bits and pieces and really learn from others that have been in incubation longer and learn from that community, but also help to kind of provide that hub, if you will, within the CNCF and all of their projects.
Sounds exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow, I can't wait to see what's coming next. Talking about that, what is the next step? And please do not say I want to graduate, because that's obvious.
Damn it, that's where I was going to go. What's next? So for me, something I've been thinking more and more about is actually this community. I think we've done a really good job around the project and supporting the community as we can so far, but I really want to double down in that. The community is super important for Backstage and to take Backstage forward as a project. So I think for me, and this is maybe a little more personal, but for me, it's investing in that community more. What can we do more together? How can we work together better? How can we enable and give a even bigger voice to the community in the direction with the project?
I'm pretty sure that a lot of people are excited about that, and I agree with you that would be a logical and very fruitful next step. Awesome. So thank you for jumping here on the community session and explaining a little bit about this. You'll be attending the panel later, so we'll get more Lee later.
See you in a little bit.
Bye-bye. So next up is another big news thing, and long awaited, I think. Maybe also some would say long overdue. But we have 1.0 coming up very, very soon. Johan, how soon?
Hi, how's it going?
Great. How are you doing?
Awesome. I'm good too.
So
I guess
you are
I'll
here
talk
to
about
talk about
1.0.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. I'm Johan, or J Haals on GitHub. I'm one of the Backstage maintainers. I have worked on, and the team and a lot of other contributors have worked on getting Backstage ready for 1.0 release for quite a few weeks and months now. There's been a lot of deprecations, cleanups of like API services, all to make life as smooth as possible for people after we've released 1.0 to have hopefully as few breaking changes as possible in the future for the core systems. But yeah, so there is quite a few things to unpack here with 1.0, because we're making some changes to our release schedule and how we think about the packages and versions and so on. So I'll try to unpack that to the best of my abilities. So at the moment, or maybe I should start, a Backstage release is really an umbrella version for multiple packages. As you all know, Backstage has a bunch of plugins that you get, a bunch of APIs, libraries, and so on. All of those are individually versioned. And once a week currently, we bundle those up into what we call a Backstage release. We've changed to version numbers now. So if you go into our GitHub repo, there is a 071.1, which is the latest release. Tomorrow morning, we're making that a 1.0 release. And with that also comes a promotion of some of the core packages inside Backstage to also get a 1.0 release. That includes a bunch of the core packages, the catalog, scaffolder, and tech docs as well is getting bumped to version 1. With that, we're also slowing down the release cycle a bit for our releases. So at the moment, you get a new release every week. We're moving to a monthly release cycle now. So that means tomorrow we have a 1.0, and in a month we'll have a 1.1. But it might be that you're a trailblazer, or you want to have the latest and greatest. You have developed a new plugin and you want to consume that as soon as possible. And to make that possible, we're introducing two what we call release lines. So we have the main release, which is the monthly one that comes out once every month. And then we have the next releases, which is our weekly release. Pretty much the same as we have today. The only difference is that it's not the default that you get out of the box. If you run a versions bump today, you get the latest main release. But there is an option now to supply a release flag, which gives you the latest next release, pretty much. We're also, since we're promoting a few packages to 1.0, we're changing the version policy or introducing a version policy for packages. Previously, we've used something we call the stability index, which was basically a place on the website where you have to go in and check, what's catalog backend, what's the stability index if I'm making changes to that backend or to that package. What we're doing now is basically making a a difference between packages that reached version 1 or above, or packages that are on version 0. So we're still going to have a bunch of packages that are early, that's going to have the regular updates, potentially breaking changes in minor releases. But our major version packages, those that are on 1 and above, have some stricter policies now, we're not going to do breaking changes without having at least 1 month of deprecations out, for example. And we're going to do our best to have as clear guides on how to make that transition from version 1.0 of tech docs to version 2 of tech docs when that happens. So that's one of the changes that's going to happen as well. All of this is out on the website as well. So there is an update for the version and package policy that I hope someone will share in the chat. Yeah, so our regular, like the individual packages inside Backstage will adhere to the December policy. So like breaking changes on a 1.0 package means you will release a 2.0. But the overarching Backstage release that goes out as 1.0 tomorrow, that does not adhere to December. It's similar to what you see in Kubernetes. I mean, that project has been out since, 2004, and it's still at version 1. So we're probably gonna have a version 1.48 of Backstage in the future. I think that's the gist of versioning and version 1 of Backstage that's coming out.
Yeah, awesome. And I think, well, that we were all waiting for this for quite a while, but there's a lot of work in this, right? Behind the scenes to get all the documents ready.
Yeah, there's been quite a lot going on with like cleaning up, making sure that we have nice and tidy APIs and documenting as much as possible. And the community has been tremendous, helping out with like preparing docs and like making sure that everything should be as smooth as possible for people that get into Backstage and like learn how to use different APIs and so on.
Yeah, and I like the quote, hopefully we'll not break anything.
Absolutely. I mean, there will always be breaking changes. It's just like how we handle them, and we hope that like this that we have a bit more structure now in how we do introduce breaking changes as well, and give a bit more room for people to notice that there is a deprecation out and give them time to actually update. To be honest, though, I do think a lot of companies, including Spotify, is probably going to continue on the weekly releases to get everything as soon as possible to find those new features and get those as quick as possible, because everything that goes in the weekly releases will eventually land into the main release that goes out every month.
Yeah, but there's always the companies who will wait.
Absolutely, yeah.
Tested and proved version, and that's fine too, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for joining, and if people have questions, please throw them in the chat. I'm pretty sure Johan will hop over to Zoom very soon to answer them if they are
Definitely.
there. Okay, cool. That brings us to two more things. The first one is this project couldn't have been this big and this successful without the contributors, but also the adopting companies. If you are a company who is adopting Backstage or has adopted Backstage, we really, really value you being listed on the public adopters list. So please go to our GitHub and put yourself on the adopters file and list yourself, because that's super important for the health of the project and for other companies to adopt Backstage as well. The second thing is that we have added RSS feeds to both backstage.spotify.com and backstage.io blogs. So Himanshu will probably paste the links in the chat. So if you want to automate retrieving all the news, or you have an RSS reader, I don't know, you could add it. Next up is the panel. And let me put everybody in the stream. Good, that's a fun lot. Hello.
Hello.
So first a round of introductions. Let's follow the clock. So let's start with Cirpo.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cirpo, and I'm the head of developer experience at DAZN. And we are using Backstage. And thanks a lot for that, folks.
Yeah. Marco.
Hello, I'm Marco, Principal Engineer at DAZN, and I love Backstage, and I'm really happy to be here to celebrate this second birthday, and really excited about version 1.0.
Lee?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Lee. I'm Engineering Manager here at Spotify, working with open source and our internal instance of Backstage that we have.
Nick?
Hi, my name is Nick Quaranto. I am a engineering manager for the app platform team at Wistia. We're a video marketing host, and we just recently got Backstage up and running and into 80-ish repos here. We're really excited about it, and happy birthday.
Yay, happy birthday. So yeah, let's start with Marco. So you're an engineer. What is the most challenging aspect of being a software engineer in your opinion?
Right, so in my opinion, it is about the cognitive overload. Developers nowadays aren't solely focusing on solving the problem at hand by implementing an algorithm. They are very frequently expected to provision and maintain the infrastructure where their services are built and are running. And especially now when working on cloud native application, they need to understand well the capabilities and the limits of their cloud provider, which are constantly evolving. Often they are supposed to be on call, so they also need to understand how their service operates in production, thinking about how their upstream and downstream dependencies are reacting and working. So they really have a lot on their table.
Yeah, that's a good summary. Lee?
Yeah, so I have to echo a lot of what Marco said, actually. I 100% agree. It has been a minute since I was hands-on every single day, deep dive in the code. But I think the ever kind of growing complexity of kind of, you're no longer just writing the piece of code that you have right in front of you, trying to solve that problem. You are importing dependencies that have, I don't know how many packages and things that you have to be aware of, and all of that side of things. You're working with infrastructure. That is something that back when I was kind of doing engineering a lot, that was daunting in itself. Now it's, all the cloud platforms, all of these different things, all of these new tools coming along every day. Managing all of that kind of as you're thinking about what you're writing. And then, as Marco was saying, like switching the context between all of those and kind of piecing all of that together to make a salient solution, I think is really, really challenging. Really challenging.
Nick, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to take a different tack. I think like the hardest problems are the human ones. Maybe this is why I'm an engineering manager. But I think it's hard to. If you want to go far, you've got to do it with others. And I think there's only so far an individual contributor can go. Like they have to bring along others. So I think that's the challenging part for me. It's people can learn how to code. It's amazing when I get to help out more junior developers or people early in their career. But I think how do you work with others and get stuff done together? I think that's the magic that we're still struggling with after years and years. And I'm excited to push that a little bit.
We're only human after all.
Yes.
Cirpo.
Yeah, basically the same thing that everyone else said. If we think about also how software development is evolving in the past years, like everything like microservices, micro front ends, empowering teams, moving fast, let also teams be independent from one another, which is amazing. But at the same time, you need to manage all the information and all the changes that are happening so rapidly. So this is probably the main challenge that we are facing in engineering. And that's why we love Backstage. Sorry, I already said that. Yes.
Oh, you can't say that enough.
I can
That's
keep
okay.
saying. Okay.
This is a little bit of an opinionated panel, maybe. So Cirpo.
Cirpo is fine.
Yeah. You are head of developer experience.
Yes.
Right? When should organizations start investing in developer experience?
That's a question that I get very often. First thing I want to say is that I strongly believe that every single company has a developer experience. Not every company has a developer experience team. Okay, so the question could be when a company should start investing in a team. Probably, from my point of view, as soon as you notice that some teams or engineers that needs to focus too much on something that is not really related to on the main value that they need to bring. If they're working on a product or on a service, as soon as you find some opportunity also to automate or to make their life easier, this is where you should start working on the developer experience. My suggestion is when we started 4 years ago, more or less 4 years ago, we were just 3 people because it was an amazing idea, but we didn't know where to go and how to approach things. So from my perspective, you should start with developer experience, maybe not starting like a business plan with a full-fledged big team, but start small, even with internal working groups, maybe on small initiatives, and then start, let's say, measure and see what's the real impact and value that you're bringing to the rest of engineering. So start soon as possible, as soon as you see that there are some opportunities to make engineers' life easier, and so they can focus on the main things that they are supposed to do.
Okay, shall we go clockwise?
That means me?
Yeah.
Yeah, very much second what Cirpo said. And I think as soon as you start to have at least 2 engineers, you will start to see the developer experience growing, because they will start to exchange scripts, they will start to exchange aliases, and so on and so forth. So when do you decide that you need to do an investment? It really depends on the size of the organization, I think. So small organization probably don't need a dedicated team, but they still can have maybe some individuals that express this interest or show their will and their capabilities in building the developer experience to show and foster all those ideas, automation. It could be from starting, for instance, for a simple automation of a form that everybody needs to fill every day, and they just come with the idea, how can we automate that so we can make it easier for everybody, and from there on it will just grow organically, I think.
Yeah, those are both good points. I've been a part of some smaller orgs that like it would not make sense for someone to like work full time on developer experience, but those tasks gravitated my way because I like love the finickiness of upgrades and figuring out dev tooling and all the buckets of developer experience. But in an org, I think it's a different case, and I think you need to like have a long-term view, which many organizations don't. It's like, what's the short-term like next feature thing, or like what are we doing for Q1? And it's like it really takes a long-term. How are we going to support people? How are we going to like not burn out the engineers we have saddled with tech debt? And I think that's the key. Is like you have to like once you make that shift to like, okay, we're not just shipping the next feature. It's like, well, we're taking weeks longer to do this because of XYZ, and developer experience is like probably one of those bits that I've noticed where it's like, oh, we're hooked on this old API that no one can use, and it's from an NPM package that's 100 things deep, and no one knows what that is anymore. So it's like when those tasks start piling up, like you are almost forced, I think, to like have the long-term view, or I guess the other path is darkness, where you don't have to, where you just saddle on and then you become bogged down by it all. So there's definitely like a switching point. But I think for many years, it's only been like dev tooling. It hasn't been talked in developer experience terms. So I'm really excited that there's like a shift in how we think about
it. I think I don't think there's much more than that I can add that you guys all haven't said. I think for developer experience, I mean, it's always there, whether you've got one, whether you're a sole dev working on one thing and that's your entire organization, or you're, up in the thousands. What developer experience, I think, just grows and evolves with the number of people that you've got. it's all about unblocking things and automating pieces and kind of trying to abstract. For me, a lot of it is around kind of like, if I know I'm trying to get something solved for one of my customers or one of my end users, then that's the thing that I want to solve. I don't want to have to spend, 90% of that time on the plumbing underneath. And I think as you grow as an organization, that plumbing, for want of a better word, gets more complex. And that's where, particularly, I think with Backstage, like the thing that really struck me when I started on Backstage at Spotify was, it wasn't just a random set of web pages that had been quickly thrown together, or a random set of scripts. Those exist, don't get me wrong, and they're still super valuable. But this was the first time I've seen trying to piece all of that together and create that journey through to make my life easier and to make getting the things done for the end users easier for me. And I think that's the shift from going from like the sole person, if you will, working on something, to when you start getting into these bigger, more complex systems with hundreds of services and components and things around.
Okay, so let's stick with Lee. There's a question in the chat, and that's about metrics. So how do you track success of developer experience organizations or groups, and what does success actually look like?
That is a really good question, and there is not one silver bullet for it. There is not one clean way that you can do it. There's, as I'm sure a lot of you have seen, like one of the go-to metrics for us has always, within Spotify, has always been onboarding time. That was one way we could see someone who wasn't familiar with all of Spotify's kind of underlying technology and processes and things like that. How can we support them, and how soon do they become effective? Like, when do they get their first few kind of PRs out there and kind of having an impact with the end user? And that's been one way that it's been a constant go-to that we go back to measure how we're doing. And it's the one that we talk about. We had I think it's 55% reduction early on in Backstage's life, and that's kind of made us know, that we were onto something maybe. Outside of that, to be honest, it's this is maybe this sounds a bit wrong, but the three things I keep an eye on in the team are a little more abstract: freedom, flow, and frustration. And it's like within the teams that are working on plugins or things around Backstage, how much control over what it is they're trying to solve do they actually have? How many times do they hit a roadblock where it's a case of, we're missing this fundamental underlying piece of infrastructure, but it doesn't really fit for us to kind of be the long-term owners of that, if you will? How many times do those types of things come up? How often are the teams able to stay in the flow on those problems? How many times have they pulled out of that flow because of distractions or needing to build up some other things with other teams, etc. And then obviously frustration. Like, if the engineers are in a problem-solving mode, maybe they're mobbing as a whole team and all of this, and they're enjoying it, having fun, and we're getting those things out and solving problems for the end users. That's where we're winning. Otherwise, if they are kind of getting frustrated and that side of things, again, another indicator. But this isn't it's not infallible for everybody. This is an engineering manager talking. So these are just the things that I don't have hard numbers for, but things that I look out for as we're going through the process.
Okay, let's go counterclockwise now. Nick.
I'm not that good with metrics either, so I don't know. This is something that I'm working on, but I think the one that's in my head is similar qualitative. I think I'm not good at this either. is like the percentage of time that we're spending on like reactive versus proactive things. And that's the like the key that I see of like, okay, we are spending too much embedding on other teams or fixing other issues that just crop up randomly, and like not looking at like at how the landscape is and charting the path. And when that gets out of whack, that's when I start to worry. And it's like, okay, well, if other teams are also getting bogged down, frustrated, I love that. That's when we need to help out and plan out a bigger like proactive project. So I wish I had a better like hard numbers game though. Here I don't.
Isn't there some sort of frustration index then? Because this is the second time I hear frustration.
It should be.
It's coming soon.
There you go. Marco.
Yeah, we will have a scorecard about frustration in Backstage. So yeah, I'm kind of the same opinion. So first of all, measuring is very hard, and it's sometimes very subjective as well. And from my point of view, one winning point that I could think of, but just because I'm not a manager and I am principal engineer, is how many times is the team interrupted during creating features because they need to support. And we are very frequently supporting other teams. So if we manage to reduce those number of interactions that we have, we can be more productive. And it means also that we are making a great job because people find all the information that they need where they need it at the time they need it. And then I leave it to our manager.
Exactly. Okay.
I'll leave it to the manager, please.
Exactly. So I quote everyone, right? I agree with what has been said so far. I would add other stuff. The fact that it's part of the frustration in DX. We also have the DX support channel, which is used massively, and basically we also check how many people are happy or frustrated there, and we check also what are the main topics in that chat. So if people are talking about something continuously, probably we need to do something about it. Another thing that we introduced in every tool that we have is it's called RMS, Rate My Service. Basically, you can provide feedback anytime, like a ranking and stuff like that. This is how we measure stuff. So if people are happy, are smiling, and they're saying thanks a lot of time, probably things are going the right direction. And because sometimes it's also difficult to measure, as Marco said. Sometimes you have to bet. Okay, shall we work on this tool? Sometimes you have the data, sometimes you don't. So this is how you monitor basically how many times people are smiling, let's say, and this is a good metric from my point of view as well.
Cool. Let's talk trends. So what are the trends in developer experience? What is the new stuff we're focusing on?
I started seeing some signals here and there, but we always talk about tooling. And again, sorry, I'm a manager, but from my point of view, developer experience is not just about the tools. It's also about the impact they can have on people and on the culture itself, which is sometimes, it's never in our mission, for example, we don't have it, but we know that sometimes we can have an impact on how people are communicating with each other and how things are evolving in engineering in general. And the trend that I'm seeing is that now lots of other people in the DX space are talking about somehow merging like a DevRel and DX and developer and tooling, developer experience all together. And this is also what I would love to, is like a 360 experience, because those two things, the tools can improve the daily life of an engineer, but at the same time, you need to also think about the culture and all those kind of things. So it's not really a trend at the moment, but I hope it's going to become a trend.
Okay, Marco, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm very much in line with Chip, of course. So as
just
well,
because I'm the manager.
Yeah, exactly. I need to be in line, right? Because otherwise we'll have our one-to-one later.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that the trend is indeed towards focusing on company culture and, for instance, foster the idea of favoring async communication and reducing the number of meetings, advocating for flexible hours, and building dedicated onboarding and mentoring programs. For instance, in the zone, we have also helped building a mentoring program for the engineering community. So it's not, yes, shifting from solely focusing on tooling and moving towards the culture as well, and have a 360, as the great Cirpo said.
Okay, Lee.
Yeah, so I can definitely, I hear about the culture side of stuff. If I think back to early on when we started kind of putting Backstage out there and meeting with a lot of different potential adopters and people who are interested in Backstage and that side of it, sometimes we get this question of like, we demo what we had internally of Backstage, and which is at the time would have been 4.5, heading towards 5 years of kind of evolution. So it was quite a full platform. And from time to time, we get this question of, how do we get what Spotify has? How do we get all of these things as part of it? And I never took that as, oh, well, here's 150 plugins and so like, great, 150 plugins, what do I do with that? It was like, in that question was wrapped in the culture. Like, how do you use it? Why are you using it that way? How have you encouraged use in that way, and how it's helping people? So I definitely think culture is a big part of kind of what's coming up next, for sure. And beyond that, I think the only other piece is maybe a little bit simple, but the design side of things, actually. Back when I was engineering every single day, it was, here's a folder full of bash scripts, and here's a folder of Python scripts and stuff, and that was it. Like, go nuts. There's something to be said about making it easy to just, I want to set up this Kubernetes cluster. Being able to go in there and just click a couple of buttons, fill in a form, away we go. We care about how the tools we use look and operate. And yeah, that will only, I think, continue to grow, if you will.
Nick.
Yeah, I can talk about the trend that brought me to Backstage. I think that's the one I've been writing. And that's just for documentation. I think that there's been an overarching theme for like how not only I arrived, but just like what I've been focusing on lately, which is like, how do people learn about the software we write, and as they get not just onboarded, but as they grow in our org, how do they figure out about that deep dark corner of services or components and learn about it? The trend that I noticed in how I got to learning about Backstage is that there's actually a few different startups that I had found through Hacker News, including, I think, README, Archbee, and then of course there's a million blog posts about like using Notion to manage all this stuff about like how you document and figure out who owns what service and what the API is and all of that. And it's really interesting that there's entire companies in this space. And then I'm very grateful that there's obviously a project that I think has been winning that is open source in this space. So I think that's like a really promising trend in that. Like, I remember a few years ago, like that Read the Docs conference started. I think that I would love to see more of this, like in general. And I hope that Backstage is like one of many voices in this like broader trend of making documentation and just normal prose writing a thing.
Let's hope so. So now we're talking about Backstage, which brings me to the question, and I think I kind of read it between the lines already. But what problems are you aspiring to solve within your organization? Nick.
Yeah. I kind of alluded to one of those. There's like three kind of core problems, like questions that I think that we've been struggling with, and this tool is like one way we can solve them. And I haven't yet figured it out. I think for me, it's like who owns this thing there's like a very clear line that like that Backstage helps with. How does the system like operate as a whole? That's like in people's heads. You have to like sit down by the campfire and learn the story and why someone years ago made a decision. And we won't get all the way to a perfect state there, but I think this is one of the better ways I've seen of like, oh, I can actually like trace the story. I don't have to like be by the campfire to like hear the war story of why someone flipped that thing on or why we have this thing that is mysterious. And then like to go back to the docs point, like how can I search across everything at once and read about things and then like continue to like explore almost Wikipedia style about like what are the things we run and why. And I think that's like those, if we can make a dent on those three things, it would make a big difference.
Sure, Paul.
Again, for me, it's more about the community in the sense that other than the catalog bit, which is super important, documentation, what we are trying to see is what we are trying to do, and it's working, but we still want to be even more impact, is having contribution from our other teams as well. So it is already happening in the sense that we had another department that basically they built an entire set of plugins about Backstage internally. So I would like to see more adoption internally because to build a strong internal engineering community, and it's happening. So it's going to take a little bit of time, but this is what I would like to see in Backstage more from our point of view. And I guess also the huge work that you folks are doing as an open source helps us massively in order to have the enthusiasm and push things forward.
Okay, thank you. So there was a question in the chat, and I wanted to ask that one to Marco first. We are grappling about how to best roll out Backstage within our organization. Any tips or stories you can share?
Well, that's a great one. I can share my story. So it was end of 2019 when I heard about Backstage in another podcast, and it kind of just clicked. We need this. And since then, I started to brag and ask people, can we start working on Backstage? I think it will be great. I wasn't working in the DX team back then. And then finally, Cirpo heard my voice and asked me to temporarily join the DX team to work on on Backstage. And it was kind of difficult at the beginning because, first of all, we needed to understand how to fit with the existing ecosystem. We were lucky because we already had APIs in place which could list all the services that we had. We also had information about the organization. So we only had to make the decision, do we want to continue working with the APIs that we have in place, or do we start and work with the catalog info and information that Backstage supports natively? And it was, if I were to go back then, I was just lap myself in the back because I think too hard on that. And it just, Backstage is great because it's so easy to build your own plugins and your own import. I can't remember how it's called now, but we basically ended up in creating our own transformation. So we import our API from our APIs, all the information, we populate the catalog. So we need, I think the first step is to populate the catalog. Start with what we know. So if you are, for instance, we are working mostly with AWS and Elastic Container Service. So we built Backstage on that because that's what we knew. If you are on Kubernetes and you're already using Kubernetes, run Backstage in Kubernetes. You start from the scaffolded up. It's very easy to get started. There is a CLI tool that just pings up, and I'm kind of doing almost daily now to just see what is happening with upstream. And once you have your Backstage running on the environment that you own, you need to think about how you want to populate your catalog. And it really depends on what you have already available in your organization. If you're starting from scratch, then a good idea is, of course, to adopt the catalog information. And you need to make it so that it's frictionless for your engineering teams to create this metadata file that are required for the catalog to be populated. Once you have that, it opens a world, because then you can start exploring the APIs. You can start to work on tech docs, which is another great feature that I'd recommend to start looking from the very early days. And then possibly, depending on what where you are on your journey, maybe also the scaffolding needs a good look. For instance, in the zone, it's now a year where we started working on the project, and we are only touching now the scaffolding. We left it to the end, and we focus mostly on populating the catalog and empowering tech docs first. I hope that answered the question.
Okay, Nick. Yeah, it's fresh, right?
Yeah, we just went through that exact process Marco just mentioned. We took a different approach for introducing the catalog YAMLs, so I think that would be I'm glad we did it. We did not wait for, and this is the tip I would give, is that I would not wait for those teams. I would just crack open some pull requests if you're using GitHub or however else you're doing source code management. Just make a best guess. And we did this by we created a spreadsheet and got some socialize that around of here's the tags we're going to introduce. Here are the first pitch at systems for how we think they're going to work. And then some teams took that and said, I think we want to own this. We know you're going to do a best guess, but this looks really cool and we'll take it on. So that's one way to bring them in that I really appreciated that team did. And then there's other teams that are please get us started and then we'll get to it when we get to it. I think the other thing that's key that helped our developers out is running it locally was really important. So which makes sense. It's as an application. And I think I would encourage that as well. Instead of just get it working on your own machine first, make sure that works, and then deploy it to production like a real app, just like you would with anything else.
Cool. So we are almost over time. So the last question, I'm going to start with Lee. What advice do you have for companies and engineers who are just starting to invest in developer experience?
Start small. Make sure that you have look for the value that you can add. There's going to be something that is there's something that started you thinking about developer experience. Solve that. Start there and build on it piece by piece. Don't try, and it's a similar advice to actually say with Backstage. Don't try and implement everything all at once. Start with those small pieces, build them up. Add the value, let others see the value that you're adding, and take it from there. As to what that thing is that you should start with, differs for everybody. Whatever, again, as you're thinking about the work that you're doing or the teams that you're working with is doing, what's the thing that frustrates? That's the thing where you should start with. That's it.
Sure, Paul.
Yes, I wanted to say the same thing as Lee, but I can provide an example on a small thing. So I don't know about other companies, but I think it's so common. You can communicate as much as you want. You can send blog posts, emails, messages. At some point, someone will miss that communication. It's fine. So what was happening is that every time a platform or DX was deprecating a service or introducing new stuff, someone will miss that communication. So once the service was released or deprecated, the chat in the DX support will start flooding with message. Oh, I have an error here. I have an error there for 2 weeks. Well, we communicated that. Read the blog post. We said, okay, how can we be more effective on that? So we built a simple pop-up in the CI/CD, a tool that we have, that basically, every time there's an error, anyone can either click a button, go to Google, and with an error, or ask in the platform chat, or provide the solution yourself, like a Stack Overflow embedded in the CI/CD every time there was a specific error. And that thing took like probably 3 days of development for 1 or 2 engineers, and then we could measure that things. Every time we were releasing, deprecating something, the request of support dropped dramatically, not to 0, of course, but this is also a small thing. This is for me also an example of developer experience. It's a quick win. You don't need to set up a team in order to do that. You can have just 2 engineers that would like to solve that challenge.
Marco.
Yeah, sorry. As soon as Lee said start small, he said, "Yeah, I'm gonna say start small."
I saw everybody like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's really you if you try to conquer the world, you will never get to it. So start building pieces by pieces, and start with something that is immediate. Sometimes you might not see it, but it's there. Like Cirpo, what just Cirpo said. We had this constant error, and they were just asking on support, so we just solved like that. And another example that we have is that sometimes they come to the X support channel asking who's responsible for X service. So what we built is a tool that you just ask the question. DAZN is a command line tool. It's called DAZN. It has many features. One of these is DAZN support. You put the service name, and it answers you with the right team. And if there is a channel, it brings you to the channel where that support team is. So it's small things that all together will basically make you conquer the world at some point. But maybe the company, not the world.
Nick.
Yeah, I think the only thing I had to add there is try to have folks on your team pair with others, or you yourself, if you're responsible for DX, like work alongside of others. And I know that's even harder in the remote world that many of us live in now, but I've been a big fan of this tool called Tuple, Tupele. It's like a pair programming tool. It's like flawless and crystal clear. I know Zoom does this too. Slack does it. Like, see what people are running into, work with them for half an hour, just start really small there. And I think you'll learn like what is blocking them a lot faster than you would in a different check-in. Yeah, get your hands dirty.
Yeah, might be opinionated. VS Code has great functionality too, but anyway, that was expected maybe. So yeah, that brings us to the end of this panel. Thank you so much for joining and participating. There were way more questions in the chat than that we could answer today, but maybe we should do a panel some other time again. If you want that, please say yes, I want that in the chat. Thank you, folks, for joining.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
This brings me to the end of this community session. Thank you so much for joining. Please, check out the birthday post. The nice video I shared earlier is in there. Share it with people. The recording of this session will be online soon-ish. Most likely, normally it's a week later or something, and you'll be able to find it. But if you want to know when it's published, join us on Discord. Continue the conversation there. We're also on Twitter. We have a newly created Twitter community where we post some updates, and you can post some updates too. So feel free to join it, and otherwise subscribe to the newsletter, which is always full of all kinds of community news. If you want something highlighted in a community newsletter, just reach out to me on Discord, and I will make sure that it gets forwarded to the right people who put everything together behind the scenes. Really lovely. If you are not subscribed yet, please do so. Okay, so a lot of things to celebrate. Probably next month will be a normal adapter session again without lots of celebrations, though There's always a lot of good stuff happening, and keep up the good work. And I hope to see you next month. If you want to go down the nitty-gritty of contributing, we have next week on Wednesday for CET, we have the contributor community session where we go deep into everything to do with contributing to Backstage. The link will be in the chat, I think, as well. And otherwise, it's spotify.v/community sessions.